Hi there, I'm AWayfaringFrog and welcome to my second YouTube video. Today I have another Animal Crossing inspired speed build for you, and this one's going to be a reimagining of Nook's Cranny in The Sims 4. The idea came from Lucy Malloy in the comments of my last video, so thank you so much for the really great idea. If you're not familiar with Nook's Cranny, I'll add a picture on the screen, but it's essentially the main shop in the games where your character can buy all sorts of things, ranging from furniture to flower seeds and even wrapping paper. The version on screen is also the latest version from the New Horizons installment of Animal Crossing, just because I thought the bright colours were really fun, and in previous games it was a lot more monotone. I also decided to do the non-upgraded version of the shop, but do let me know if you want to see more builds in the future, doing the different iterations of Nook's Cranny. Also, since this build is going to be based on a shop, I've decided to go for a commercial lot rather than a house. So I've used the Get to Work pack for the retail shop feature. Hopefully that makes it a bit more useful in-game as well. So now on the build, I'm just working out how to do the sign that sits on top of the Nook's Cranny building. I ended up using a few packs to kind of create my own custom sign. And that included a couple of items from Dine Out, which was this white base. And then there was also the text that I use a bit later on. And then this chopping board from the Cool Kitchen kit was actually really useful to get the red background where the iconic leaf sits. And the leaf I ended up using was one of the items from the debug catalogue for Eco Lifestyle. I believe it's one of the items that your Sims have to fabricate in-game to access usually, which is why it's hidden under debug. And I thought that suited really well. You may have also have noticed that the black sign had a backlight to it, which was bright red. I really didn't like it, but none of the other swatches looked right either, so I ended up having to custom place that. I then decided that the build was actually too big, so shortly I'll be making that one tile smaller. It makes it a lot more cozy and I think it works a lot better. But I did cut out of the video me having to meticulously replace those signs, so you don't have to suffer through that a second time. The Eco Lifestyle dumpster that I added in was supposed to replace the drop-off box that features in New Horizons, so even though it's not quite the same thing, I figured at least it was functional for your Sims. I also added a second sign above that just because the wall felt pretty empty without something there, and I didn't really want another window at the time since I was planning to place tall furniture inside to sell. I do feel like the build's starting to come together now, especially with the landscaping that I added in. This is all from the Snowy Escape world. The bamboo actually comes from debug though. I don't really know why it's not in the standard catalogue, but I thought the bright red tree just really helped make the build pop. In terms of actually how to make this a more useful retail shop as well, because whenever I play The Sims, I find that retail is just so useless, and if I want something I can just jump into the build buy catalogue from the comfort of my Sims home. I don't have to go anywhere with them. So this actually ends up selling all of the debug items from Snowy Escape. So anything that your Sim would otherwise have to fabricate, which is locked behind cheats in the build buy. I just thought that might make it a bit more fun gameplay wise, because then you can have your Sim use the fabrication machine and make money that way. A lot later on as well, I end up deciding to add a basement in for the fabrication machine, and I think I put the candle making station in too, to make this a lot more of a functional lot. And then even if you don't end up using those items to create things to sell here, at least your Sim could come along and mess around with them if they wanted. For the front of the build, I was actually really happy with how that looked with the different flower pots, and I added in one of the Snowy Escape signs as if it was leaning against the building, because again, that's how it looked in the Animal Crossing game. I also made sure to include vending machines. Even though that's not really an Animal Crossing thing, it's very Japanese, and since this is a Japanese-inspired build as well in Snowy Escape, I thought it would be useful to have those, so I made sure to have a few of them so that it's a bit more functional gameplay-wise. I actually haven't picked up Animal Crossing in quite some time now. Since the updates stopped coming, I just feel like there's not enough content for replayability, so I haven't picked it up in a while. And I think the last time I played, I was pretty happy with how I decorated my island, so there wasn't really much more to do. I know they also said that they wouldn't provide any more updates for this game, but I just feel like there's so many features missing that were in previous iterations. Like there was I mean, I know we're on an island in New Horizons, but there was Tortimer Island in New Leaf where you could go and it was sort of a multiplayer experience. That was really fun. I really enjoyed all of the mini games. So things like that, I just feel like there's a lot of content that's missing from this one. So it's kind of a shame that they didn't end up including any of that. I really hope for the next version of Animal Crossing, whenever that may be, that they add more of those old features and bring them back into the game. Now that the outside of the build has pretty much finished, I've moved onto the inside, and as you can see, the floor plan is pretty basic. For the bathroom, which is just in the back here, I did include the toilet separately because, again, that was quite a common feature that I know about Japan. I actually visited there about 6 months ago now, so I've finally seen all of this in real life. But again, with the Snowy Escape world, I think the Sims creators who were asked to build the lots in this world, they were told to do the same kind of thing. So I thought I'd try and be consistent with that. And the bathroom that I'm doing at the moment is pretty simple. I did have a go at using the Snowy Escape tiling, which I think I'll pick out in a bit. The one that's got the mountains in the background, I think it's Mount Fuji. It looked really cool, but sadly it just didn't really feel like a Nook's Cranny kind of wallpaper. So I ended up swapping that out for the more basic wallpaper that comes with Snowy Escape. I think that works a lot better. I do really need to find an excuse to actually use that wallpaper though, because I absolutely love it, but it just never seems to fit in anything that I do. So maybe I'll try a build that's focused on that wallpaper one day. So this is the wallpaper that I mentioned earlier that just flashed up on screen. If you do have any ideas of what I could do to build with that, do let me know in the comments down below, as I'd love to have a go. I'm just not really sure what to do myself at the moment. It's probably also a good point to say, if you have got this far and you're still enjoying the video, please do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already for more content in the future. It's a really great help and I'd really appreciate it. The bathroom is finally finished in the build now, so I'm just having a look around for what kind of furniture to use. I ended up raising this section in the back of the build up on a platform. Again, the games kind of do that similar sort of thing, so I thought it might be good here, and it splits up the space quite nicely. And now I'm just kind of dragging items out of debug that I wanted to use. I needed to sort of see them to be able to figure out how to lay them out in my mind, so they are just going to be dumped in the middle of the room for a while, but they eventually find a home throughout. I also tried to pick different colours of each kind of item, since there wasn't really space to, say, have a few beds that you could choose from in different colours. So I just picked out a few that looked colourful and quite nice. But again, if you did download this build and wanted to use it yourself, anything that you fabricate, you can display and sell that way. So you could always just choose which ones you want to create instead and display in here. But I liked how colourful it looked. And again, in Animal Crossing, some of the things that Tom Nook or the Nooklings sell just don't really seem to make sense together. I swear sometimes there's just like this golden throne and then next to it is this shabby old bed, but it makes it kind of fun. So here I ended up splitting the room up a bit with this wall, just as sort of a divider. There's also a section in the corner of that which is just useless space, so I closed that off, but I thought it helped separate the entrance from the other side and then gave me more area to display furniture items, so I think it worked out quite well. Also, for the rug that I put down, I ended up adding a few more later, but when I went to test the build by bringing a sim here, I discovered that you actually can't mark those ones for sale, which really bothered me, but I thought they looked quite nice, so I kept them in anyway. Oh, and here, this might seem a bit weird, but I'm adding these notes in bottles from the Wedding Stories game pack. If you haven't played the older Animal Crossing games, that might make no sense, but that is actually something that you used to be able to buy. Your character could write a note and then sort of send it out to sea, and if you played online with friends or even locally, sometimes they'd get the message in the bottle kind of washing up on the shore. And again, I suppose in New Horizons, they kept that feature in by bringing notes in bottles to help teach you crafting recipes or some of the cooking recipes in game. So it's still a feature in there, it's just not sold in Nook's Cranny anymore. I am sorry though if you don't have wedding stories, and I absolutely don't blame you, but I thought they were cute to include. When I was playtesting though, I actually discovered that those notes and bottles don't have a value, so whenever I sold them, my sim earned 0 simoleons. I'm guessing as well if you came as a customer to the store, you could buy them for free. They're not really useful from a money-making perspective in that sense, but again, it's kind of easy access to be able to get them in-game for decoration purposes, so I kept them in the basement now, and I'm just preparing that section that I mentioned where I'll have the functional gameplay items to be able to craft all of this furniture to sell. Again, not really something that's in the Animal Crossing games, but it was useful for The Sims. And whenever I play, if you're anything like me, I hate lots that have nothing to do, so I wanted to make sure there was something included in there. I was also really indecisive on the colour scheme for the interior of this build. As you can see, I've got this really orange wood all around at the moment, but I don't actually like that colour at all. I just felt like it fit the Nook's Cranny theme, so I left it there to see if I could get used to it. But I end up reverting to this paler wood swatch that matches the Snowy Escape counters and all of the wooden furniture from Eco Lifestyle Debug. I think it ends up looking a lot nicer and it brightens up the place quite well. So that will eventually change over for the basement too. The flooring ended up feeling really monotonous as well, so later I end up finding a few spots to put the tatami mats on from Snowy Escape, and I think that works really nicely. So now I'm actually adding in these cards that come from the kids stuff pack, I believe. They're basically like Pokemon in the game. I can't remember what The Sims calls them now, but with the kids stuff pack, the kids can kind of play with those. So I thought they were a useful item to have, and I actually don't know how you're supposed to access them normally. I haven't really played with that feature much. So I ended up adding them in here, because even though it's not really Animal Crossing themed, I thought they'd be useful just because there's an event in Snowy Escape where you can go around collecting these. And I just remembered the name, they're called Void Critters. So there's a festival that goes on every so often where I think your Sims basically play Pokemon Go and go around trying to collect all of these void critters. So it seemed like a useful thing to have from that point of view. And the ghosts that are on the wall, they're also from Snowy Escape. You usually have to get them while you're exploring around the area. I think if you go for a hike, you have the opportunity to collect those spirits. And I always think they're really cute, and I just can't be bothered to do the gameplay sometimes to get hold of them, so I thought it would be nice to have them here. And again, it fits the Japanese vibe quite well. I did also make sure to add seed packets, because again, that's a really classic thing that you can buy from Nook's Cranny in Animal Crossing, so I just had to include those. I did make sure to include the ones though that you usually have to either max out or just get a really high skill level in gardening, so again it felt a bit more useful from a gameplay perspective, since whenever I reach that level of skill in gardening, I feel like my sim usually has the fruit or vegetables that I wanted, so I don't end up buying those seed packets after a certain point. So I figured it would be useful to have those off the bat if you do download this. It might also be worth pointing out that even though the way that I've placed some of the items for sale may not look that aesthetically pleasing, I did that just because that's where they slot to the counter, and I've already discovered that if you try and alt place things and then set that for sale, your Sims just can't access it for whatever reason, even though it's right in front of them. So again, just to help with gameplay, I tried not to alt place anything that I expected to set for sale as part of the retail feature. And then back in the basement now, I'm just creating a room to be able to have the soy plants for candle making, since I generally just like having access to this whenever I use that feature of the game. So I made sure to add plenty in case you're not on the lot very often, so at least whenever you do come, you have a decent batch to use. And I've also added in the tatami mats at this point. I used green for the downstairs to brighten up the space since it was very monotonous in colour tone, so I think it looks a lot nicer like this. But then upstairs, with all of the really colourful furniture. The green tatami mats just ended up looking too much, so I picked the beige swatch instead. We're now coming towards the end of the speed build portion of the video, so if you haven't already, please be sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you know when my next video is out. You can also download this build using my EA ID on the Sims gallery. And as before, if you have any ideas for future builds, be sure to leave a comment below, even if it's not Animal Crossing related. I have some plans already, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you want to see on the channel too. Thanks again. I hope you enjoy the screenshots and have a great rest of your day.